Wow! I'm standing on the moon today, only because of science. I'm loving it already. What about you?
Hi, welcome to Riya Kankonkar's channel, and today we will be learning Science 1. And in Science 1, we will be starting with the most interesting topic, that is gravitation. Yes, so let's start. We will be learning 7 points in the chapter, and the 7th point will have 3 different parts. Those are 3 different laws of Kepler. So be with me to complete this journey till the end. The first point from those 7 points takes us to the story of Newton. Let's see what is the story of Newton. Once, Newton was sitting under a tree when suddenly an apple fell on the ground. Yes, we have heard this story a lot of times. But let us see, where does the story take us in this chapter? Let's start. So related to the story of Newton when he saw an apple falling onto the ground, here goes the first point. The first point tells us that there is some force which attracts the object towards the center of the earth. He named this force the gravitational force later. So what did Newton think of? He thought that there is some force which is attracting the object towards the center of the earth. That was the first point. Now let's move on to the second point. The second point tells us that when the height increases, the gravitational force decreases. An example, the moon is at a greater height from the center of the earth, so it doesn't get more attracted to the earth because it is at a greater height. That apple in the story which fell on the ground got attracted towards the earth because the height of the tree from the earth was very less, and so the apple fell on the ground. That is how we learn the second point. When height increases, that time the gravitational force decreases. Okay, so now let's move on to the third point. The third point here is telling us about force and motion. What is it telling us about force and motion? It tells us that force is necessary for changing the speed and the direction of the object in motion. Why is force necessary? Force is necessary for 2 main reasons. Those are changing the speed of the object and direction of the object in motion. That was the third point. Now let's move on to the fourth point. The fourth point is very interesting to know because it is telling us about centripetal force. What is centripetal force? The force acting on an object moving along a circle and is directed towards the center of the circle is called as centripetal force. We are done with the 4 points. Now let's complete with the remaining 3 points and then we are done. The remaining 3 points will be telling us everything related to Kepler. So let's start. The 5th point is telling us what did Johannes Kepler study about. Johannes Kepler studied the planetary position and motion. What is the 5th point telling us? The 5th point is telling us that Johannes Kepler studied the planetary position and motion. That was the 5th point, and now let's move on to the 6th point. The 6th point is telling us that Johannes Kepler made 3 laws describing the planetary motion and position. With this, he also noticed that the motion of planet follows certain laws. So, he gave the 3 laws describing the planetary motion and position. Let us now learn which were the 3 laws which Kepler made describing the planetary motion and the position in the 7th point. There will be 3 parts in the 7th point. Those are part A, B and C. So part A tells us the first law of Kepler. That is, the orbit of a planet is an ellipse at one of the foci with the sun. What is it? It tells us that the orbit of a planet is an ellipse at one of the foci with the sun. Foci is a plural form of focus. Now let's move on to the second law. The second law is the line joining the planet and the sun sweeps equal areas in equal intervals of time. What does it tell us? It tells us that the line joining the planet and the sun sweeps equal areas in equal intervals of time. That is the second law. Now let's move on to the third law. The third law tells us that the square of its period of revolution around the sun is directly proportional to the square of mean distance of the planet from the sun is the third law. Now let's learn this law in a symbolic form and then we are done. The symbolic form of this law is T square stands for the square of period of revolution of the planet around the sun, and R square stands for the square of mean distance of planet from the sun. In the symbolic form it is as T square is directly proportional to R square. Ahead, T square upon R square is equal to K, that is constant. So this is all for the day. But before we leave, let's revise what we did today. Let's revise the 7 points we did today. Those are, the first point we learned was that the center of the earth attracts the object. Second point was that as height increases, gravitational force decreases. Third point we learned was that force is necessary for the change in the speed and direction of the object in motion. In the fourth point we learned about the centripetal force. It told us that the force which is acting on an object which is moving along a circle and is directed towards the center is known as centripetal force. In the fifth point we learned what did Johannes Kepler study. He studied about the planetary motion and the position. Sixth point we learned was that Johannes Kepler made 3 laws describing the planetary motion and the position, and he noticed that the motion of planet has certain laws. 7th point had 3 parts. Those were the 3 laws. First law was that the orbit of the planet is an ellipse at one of the foci with the sun. Second law was that line joining the planet and the sun sweeps equal areas in equal intervals of time. Third law was in the form of a symbol, that was the square of its period of revolution around the earth is directly proportional to the square of mean distance of the planet from the sun. Well done! We have completed our mission for today. Congratulations to you for earning 7 points today. In the next videos, we will be learning more about gravitation. So be ready for more interesting topics. I will see you in the next video. Till then, bye.